chair.
Oh, there's all the things we have to do.
So everyone sees.
You'd be like, I have to talk about this right now. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We are starting this morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Stephanie Allen. I'll be starting today's meeting. It's our October meeting of the Board of Education Curriculum Committee. We're here to talk about our K through 8 data this morning. We'll have a presentation by Dr. Borsella and Ms. Diaz. But first, which we did not have a chance to do, are we not started? I have to do that all over again?
No, you're good.
No, it's Lila's now on that.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Okay, so now I have to turn it over. At our last meeting, we did not have a chance to pick a chair for this committee. So I will turn it over to our board members to start that conversation, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
I would like to nominate Nanette Melkonian, even though she went rogue and took over last time's meeting without being nominated.
For that, I will not vote. No.
I did say before.
We do not have a second. No, I second the nomination.
Okay, so it looks like Ms. Melkonian will be the chair for our.
All in favor? Yes, three.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Welcome, everyone, to our October meeting as was introduced. Thank you for joining us in the community, and thank you for those of you that are online. We have a lot of guests today, and I typically don't, I made a cheat sheet today because, and you came in late, and now I'm gonna have to cheat again. So help me here. Oh, okay. Now, we're going to do this. So I welcome Dr. Passi and Dr. Borsella and Ms. Diaz, Dr. Allen, Dr. Mace, Ms. Zarate, and Dr. Liccato, and my two fellow board members, Rachel Gilliar and Sandra Alvarez. We look forward to this very detailed conversation. We are sorry that unfortunately we do not have Dr. Feeney with us today. He had a family obligation. We will see him we will see him on Tuesday's meeting where we will discuss this information with him at that time as well. So we look forward to our conversation today, and I thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing what you are sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. So just to check in, everyone sees our screen.
No, I think they see,
Now,
Yeah, he's,
so do you know which one to switch?
it should be Apple TV.
yeah, he
Yeah,
switched it.
okay, so we're good. Okay, awesome. Good morning, I am Juanita Diaz, Elementary, Director of Elementary Curriculum.
I'm Victoria Borsella, Administrator for Literacy.
So together with Dr. Feeney, we have compiled some data information that we are here to share with you. So we'll get started. There are plenty of slides.
Do we have copies coming?
Yes, copies are coming.
They should be here shortly.
Okay.
Was I supposed to bring that?
No,
No,
I
okay.
believe
I know, I looked directly at you, right? No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You were not.
Because if I was, I apologize.
Who's bringing them?
Karen.
Okay, I'll go wait for her outside.
Oh, thank you.
So just a little quote, data should be used not to judge us, but to guide us. So laying the foundation. So we're just gonna point out a couple of things that kind of partly summarize the slides to come. So we had some growth in most grades, which shows how our implementation and adoption of a program, the vast amount of professional development we had this last year that continues this year, and all of those supports, even backing it up against our math resource personnel in each building, how it has created a huge difference in the implementation of our iReady Mathematics program. We do understand it's a big shift. It's a shift in thinking, but it is a shift that aligns with New York State's shift of mathematical standards of practice, which is important for us to be aligned to that.
In literacy, we are going to see some gains in grades K to 2. but some uneven outcomes in grades 2 to 5, which really shows more consistent practices that we need to put in place. You're also going to see some of our subgroup data. Throughout our subgroup data, some of the evidence is going to show the participation rates are a little uneven. However, we're going to address ways that we can help address this issue going forward.
We've talked about the iReady screener itself, the diagnostic, a lot, but what we are finding is that it's giving us a good way to track data and performance. From it comes many reports that teachers can utilize, tools for instruction that teachers can utilize, and it is helping us with our growth measures and aligning to state tests. In a later slide, it talks about, iReady has, they have some studies about how their designations have a strong correlation to New York State testing, just meaning that based on how they finish out in the spring, has overall a strong correlation to how they perform on New York State tests if they do take it.
Am I doing next steps?
Yes.
Okay, so for next steps, we're going to make sure that all of our students become confident readers. We are implementing a K to 5 literacy program, hopefully within the next 2 years. We have a 3-year plan going. And we really need to start talking about budgeting for that now, because it's going to be a much bigger haul to cover than math was with all the materials.
So just reiterating some math-related initiatives. So we did previously with Janet Hale, I don't know if people remember, we did the unpacking and prioritization of the mathematical standards, which gave our educators a really good refresher and look into what the standards mean. Like, we can read the standard, but what does it look like in practice in a classroom, and how does a student demonstrate mastery or understanding of that standard? We also obviously are undertaking our iReady program. We are on our 2nd year of implementation. Although we don't have our iReady embedded specialists 4 days a week like last year, we still are being supported by her in three cohorted time periods throughout the year, as well as she's available to us via email when we have questions. And we are going to continue being supported in that way.
So for ELA, we have a lot of initiatives going on. This year, in all of our elementary schools, we implemented a K-2 phonics and phonemic awareness program. Part of our PGCD K-5 reading subcommittee, we have a 3-year plan to put a K-5 program in place. This year, we're really diving deep into data and really making data-driven decisions that inform our instruction. We know that professional development is very important, so we are putting in a plethora of professional development. It started a 1.5 years ago when we looked at the overview of the Big Six. Again, the implementation of the new programs. We're expanding some of the programs that we had in our schools. This year, we're also bringing in a team of people by grade level to talk about profiles of a reader and look at best practices in literacy. During Superintendent's Conference Day, we're having another national speaker come in to talk about language comprehension through read-alouds. So we're really excited about all of this professional development that we're going to receive.
Okay, so just a little bit to preface some of the slides that are coming. We have quite a few slides. There will be a lot of charts, a lot of data, a lot of information. What we do want to say is that we are well on our journey as a district in terms of looking at data, having data inform our decisions and our moves. But that being said, we do want to preface by saying there will be some unevenness, as previously was stated. There will be differences school to school. There will be differences sometimes grade to grade within the same school. And this is part of the work that we have ahead. and being able to look at data across not only New York State, not only iReady, formative, summative assessment, and putting things into place that create more consistency and coherency is our goal and what we're driving towards. So we just want you to know that we know what the slides look like, we're aware, and we're doing a lot, which we'll touch on later in the presentation, on creating that consistency to get us all a little more evenness in the spread. So without further ado.
So first, we're going to look at our district-wide overview of our ELA proficiency. We could see a steady improvement over the past 3 years. Grades 4 to 5 have made some great of the largest gains here. Looking at the proficiency rate, it started in the 60s in 2023 to the mid-70s in 2025. As you can see, all of our grade levels are above the Nassau County average. But you know, when we look at 8th grade, 74% in 2025, can we improve that? Of course we can. So that's what we're here for. We're here to put supports in place so we can do better and help our students.
So this is the math proficiency across the last 3 administrations. So the black line shows the Nassau County average. 2025, we haven't received the county average, so that's why the line is missing from the last bar from our current testing. So here again, you can see some pretty decent, strong proficiency performance here. 3rd grade started out in the 75 up to 81, our last administration of the New York State math exam, so forth and so on. You can see for the most part, we have an increase. There's a slight decrease in 5th, and then 4th, you can see it kind of leveled out. Just a note that accelerated 8th grade algebra students do not take the Math 8 assessment. So we just included this just to remind people about implementation dips. So basically an implementation dip happens, and it's not germane to education. It's just when you put something new in place, right, it takes time for not only teachers, but even students to kind of grab a hold of the differences. For math in particular, the way the program, and again, I'll restate this, not just the program, but New York State mathematical standards are pushing us towards high levels of discourse, problem solving, explaining, right? Long are the days, this was like my biggest joke last year in doing all of my iReady parental facing meetings, right? Long are the days of you memorize and you spit the information out and that's it. There's a high level of explanation that is warranted and expected. And that means that it's not enough to know that 5 times 4 equals 20. Right, you have to show multiple ways and explain these answers in different ways. So with that being said, not only are teachers possibly, because I know as an adult, I would be doing a lot of relearning if I was doing it. And as a student, you are also kind of relearning and redoing. So there are the expectation of an implementation dip is there. And even with that being said, we still did a really good job as a district.
Okay, so now we're going to get into our grade level proficiencies, and you're going to see differences in schools. Here's where we're looking at different schools. So as you can see, this is 3rd grade from 2023 to 2025. Our Daly Elementary and Sousa made significant growth. Salem and Manor Haven remained relatively the same. So here's where some of that inconsistency comes. If you look at a Guggenheim, it shows a decrease from 82 to 61%, and this is the type of variation between schools that highlights why more consistent practices really need to be put in place, and coherence is very critical. We want to ensure that all of our 3rd graders are on track as they transition to the upper elementary, so that consistent practices are very important here. Okay, for 4th grade, when we look at our ELA, every building shows growth. Manor Haven, while starting from the lowest baseline, made significant gains from 48th percentile last year to 63rd. The key now is ensuring that this momentum carries through, right? It goes forward as our students transition into the upper grades. Grade 5 here, we see gains, especially at Sousa and Daly, but there's uneven growth across schools, which again points to the need of more consistency, that every building should have the same level of success going on. So putting practices in place, more PD, a consistent program, we will start to see changes. So here when we look at Weber, so Weber at 6th grade made significant, right? They started at 65th percentile, they went from 65 to 58 to 72. However, when our 8th graders are leaving Weber, their proficiency rate is 74%. The data here makes it clear that the gaps are forming earlier on. They're forming in elementary school. And we need to strengthen our literacy practices in K-5 so that the gap closes before they even get to Weber. And that's why it's so important to lay the foundation. I always say it's like building a house. You don't build the house from the attic on, right? You have to start from the foundation and start at K2 at the bottom and really build a strong foundation in order for your house to be well made.
Okay, so shifting into math, you see grade 3. So our 2023, 24, and 25. So you can see Daly has a steady increase. Guggenheim had a dip last year and are regaining some of those proficiency points. Manor Haven on a steady increase, Salem on a steady increase, and Sousa kind of mirrored Guggenheim where they had a dip last year and regaining and surpassed even their 23 proficiency rate. So the 3rd grade information here looks very promising overall. Grade 4, just to note, grade 4 in general, the material shifts a little bit from 3rd to 4th, ELA and math. But even with that being said, for the most part, our students either grew a little bit, stayed pretty much where they were previously, and we had a little bit of a drop at Manor Haven. So that's our grade 4 performance for math over the last 3 administrations of the New York State exam. And then grade 5 is where we'll have some notes at the end where we notice kind of almost across, right, the most where it has a more of a drop across every building. So in just thinking out loud about that, if you think about it as a 5th grader, you've had K1, 2, 3, 4 of potentially learning math a very particular way, and now all that kind of got turned on its head in 1 year. So speaking of an implementation dip, this is probably where we would expect to see a dip, right? Kind of the eldest in elementary who are least used to doing math this way. So that it, yes.
Your page doesn't indicate that this is ELA, that this is state, this is still state numbers, correct?
Yes, we're still on New York State, sorry if that's not clear. Yes.
Just double checking.
We will get into iReady data, it'll switch over, and it'll have its own little blocked out title. So yes, so implementation dip, this is where you would expect to see it, and this is where it happened, but still, for the most part, strong proficiency relative, but obviously not as good as it was previously. And then again, here we are at Weber. Ever so slight dip in 6th, and some increase in 7th, and a jump in 8th. So although 7th and 8th did not do the iReady program, everyone had the opportunity to get onto the path in math and reading, which would kind of fine tune those areas or those gaps that you would have, even if you're not doing the program. So just putting that out there, that the program itself, any program that they have is still separate from the diagnostic and the path and the opportunities that students have with their targeted skill help if they are being put onto the MyPath.
Okay, so now we're gonna look at almost the same data, but we're gonna follow a cohort. So can you click the grade? Yeah, okay. So as you can see this is for Daily School, ELA. If we look at our third cohort of third graders, they started at a 65th percentile, went to 71st, and then again to 84th. So that was a steady increase in their scores there, which is great.
So for math, there's kind of two ways to look at it. You can look at it as third grade every year, and then you see the increase. Fourth grade every year, going straight across, you see the increase, 83, 80, 90. And fifth grade, you see the drop, which we talked about. And then just as Dr. Bracella stated, we can also follow that third grade cohort from 2023 at 71 proficiency rate to 80 to a slight drop to 76. But if we follow our fourth grade cohort from 2023, they had the increase to 87. And then if you follow the third grade cohort from 2024 to 2025, they had a big jump to 90. So depending on how you're following the cohorts.
Can I just interject a question then? The numbers that we were just looking at broken out by school by grade, is that grade cohort? So when we say like grade 3, it's grade 3 in 2025, grade 2 in 2024? No. Okay, so that's not following the cohort through?
No, so
It's just,
this is giving you both views. If you want to follow the kids across, you can, or you can just follow the grade across, so to speak.
The charts just show, the graphs just showed you the grade 3 straight
so
across.
I've got this one. I meant like before when we were looking at this breakdown.
This is 333.
Yeah. Okay, so we don't have any data that's like grade 3 at this school, but what they performed like in.
That's what
That's
this is.
this.
But that's
But not
not
by
by
school.
school.
Yes, daily.
This is
Yeah.
daily.
Oh, this is.
Oh, it's daily.
Okay, sorry, we're gonna
Yikes.
do by school. Okay, I'm good.
I wasn't confused, and then you asked your question.
Sorry.
I joined right in.
Nice. Thank you for backing me up. I was too busy looking at the numbers and I wasn't looking at the top. Okay, that's great. This chart is fabulous. That's exactly what I wanted to say.
Okay, so now we're on Guggenheim.
Now we're on, yeah, so we're gonna go through each building, and you can do the same thing. You could follow the cohort, or you could look across. So here, as you can see, ELA, if we follow the third grade cohort, it went from 82 to 76 to 70, and the fourth grade, 72 to 52. And again, these are inconsistent numbers from Daly to Guggenheim, but then again, this is why we're talking about putting something in place to help support our kids and our teachers.
And for math, just the same view. We can either look at third grade year to year, and we see a dip and then an increase, right, the regain, or we can look at third grade from 2023 and just follow them year to year, and then you get from 87 to 88 to 78. If you follow 2024's third graders, they had a pretty substantial jump. So depending on how you look at it, the data, you can see grade 5, grade 4, and grade 3 generally increase, and if you follow the cohort, you see some inconsistencies. Manor Haven.
Yep, here's Manor Haven. So we could again look at the data of all different ways. If we just follow that third grade cohort, we go from 56 to 48 to 64. The fourth grade cohort relatively stayed the same, and same thing from 24 to 25. Third grade did the same.
And for math, if we are following our third grade from 23, they had a jump and then a decrease for fourth, a decrease for third. And then if we follow across the grade, third actually increase, fourth a little dip, and fifth a dip. And then here's Susa.
Okay, when we look at Sousa, we go from 65 to 65 to 80, so that's a significant increase there. When we look at grade 4, we go from 71 to 76, again, an increase. If we look at the grade 3 in 2024, it's 72 to 79, another increase. And then if we look at just across each grade level, there is an increase at Susan.
So the same thing that you see in ELA for SUSA, you actually see in math. There is a cohort increase, like if I take my third graders from 24, they went up to 76. If I take my third graders from 2023, they had a slight dip in 24, but they went up in 25. And if I take my fourth graders from 23, they also went up in 2024. And then just across the grade itself, third grade had an increase as a grade throughout the years. Fourth grade had an increase from 24 to 25. Fifth grade kind of stayed flattish. And Salem.
Salem is relatively the same. If we follow that cohort, we go from 77, slight dip to 71, then right back up to 78. If we follow third grade from 2024, it's 80 percentile to 82. And then again, if we follow the cohort across third grade, we go, it's relatively remains the same across all years, 77, 80, 78. There is a huge increase from 2023 to 2025 in grade 5. We go from 59 to 78, which is a huge jump.
And in terms of math, our third graders, if you track them throughout, they had a little bit of a dip at the last year, but still a strong proficiency rate. Our fourth graders, if you track them 23 to 24, they increased, and third graders 24 to 25 an increase. And if you look at it across the grade, increase for grade 3, a slight decrease for grade 4, and a decrease for grade 5.
Here we are at Weber. So if we follow that same cohort in 6th grade, they, from 2023, 65th percentile, 72 to 74, increasing. If we just look at the cohort going across 6th grade, 65th percentile, they did take a slight dip in 2024, but then rebounded to 72% in 2025. Even if we just look at the 7th grade cohort, 7th to 8th grade, 62 to 75, that's an increase. But relatively 8th grade across the board there, 23 to 25, relatively stayed the same.
And in math, our overall, if you look at that 6th grade and track them, relatively flat from 23 to 25. The 6th grade as a grade across the 3 years, very slight fluctuation. 7th grade had an overall increase. 8th grade had a big increase from 24, but overall even an increase from 23 for their math proficiency. Okay, so now we're going to start subgroup proficiency. So this is ELA.
Yep. Can you put the participation rates up?
So I'll just do a quick definition. When we say ENL, English as a new language, or ELS, are ELS. ED is economically disadvantaged. SWD is students with disability.
Can I just do one clarification? Just because Ms. Gilliar wasn't there when I, like at the beginning. If you can just clarify, because we are gonna look at subgroups, so students with disability, which students took the state test as far as our RISE program? Can you just clarify?
Sure, so when we look at our students with disabilities, we have the RISE program or the MILE program. Those are our self-contained regions-bound programs at the elementary and the middle school levels. They participate in the state assessments, assuming their parents don't opt them out, but that would be the same for anything else. The students in our TLC and INVEST programs, those are our functional life skill classes at Manor Haven and Weber and Schreiber. They participate in what's called the New York State Alternate Assessment, so they're not included in these numbers.
And the universal screener?
The universal screener for iReady?
Yeah.
Same thing applies.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we look at a deeper look into our subgroups, the equity gaps are very clear here. Our ENL students remain far below their peers, improving slightly to 15th percentile, while our economically disadvantaged students grew from 32 to 49th percentile over 2 years. Our students with disabilities did show growth from 36th percentile to 45, but still remaining well below district averages. Participation rates are also uneven, with ENL participation rate dropping from 65 to 46th percentile. And these disparities show that we really need an urgent targeted programs, interventions, small group instruction, and ENL supports to ensure all of our students have the same opportunities and access.
Okay, so this is our math slide. So similarly, you see the ENL participation rate, economically disadvantaged and students with disability, their participation rate hovers in the 50th percent, and their performance, you can see ENL's performance is flat. Proficiency has been about 30% for 3 years running for math. Economically disadvantaged, their proficiency performance actually slipped over the last 2 years. Students with disability, their performance has had a slight climb over the last 2 years. So again, this also demonstrates the needs for the small group instruction, best practices, making sure things are implemented consistently across all buildings for all students.
So as we said, there are some notable equity gaps here that we are addressing. The low participation rates, the uneven outcomes between our 73% proficient versus 15% proficient. Some students also might be more than one subgroup, might be considered more than one subgroup. And we are putting structures in place so that we can meet the needs of all of our students.
And a lot of things you'll hear is things that are good for ELs or students with disabilities help every student. So
Right.
it's not particular to any student that particular strategy is going to benefit it. It will benefit all. Okay. So the New York State Science exam was redesigned in '24 to reflect the updated standards. There was no elementary science in 2023, so that's why this grade 5 is missing from there. So again, that black line indicates Nassau County average, so you can see, again, 25, that's not out yet. But you do see that we are performing grades 5 and 8 higher than Nassau County's average. And then in 2025, our 8th graders had a nice jump in proficiency. So this is it broken down by school building, 24 to the New York State Science Assessment grade 5. So almost every building you see an increase. Okay, so now we're going to shift gears. So all of that was New York State data. So now we will be shifting to iReady diagnostic results from 24-25 school year, last school year. Okay, so we adopted the iReady diagnostic screener in 2024. It replaced NWEA, which we were told was used for 12 years. So the thing with NWEA was the MyPath. They didn't have a MyPath when we were utilizing it, and some of the reporting was also different. So New York State mandates that 3 times a year students receive this screener. You're not allowed to opt out of it, and it helps as a measure to denote where students are and to indicate for districts and schools if there are students in need of assistance for achieving grade level standards. And again, this was just a link to show that there's alignment between iReady's iReady screener diagnostic and New York State testing. There's a correlation. Okay, I'll do the math side and
Sure.
and she'll do the reading side. So this is to show how our district, so just to preemptively say, we do not have Nassau County comparison. It's not available to us. Even NWEA stopped reporting the Nassau County comparison to their districts. I'm not sure why. So when you see this, this is a national norm, national year-to-date, and then New York year-to-date. We do not have, it's not that we're not sharing, we do not have a Nassau County comparison. So with that said, you can see for mathematics, for our spring, which our spring that just closed out of last school year, we had approximately 69% of students that were early to mid on grade level. So 69% of our students finished out with their iReady screener in math early to mid grade level. And if you want to just look at, if you compare it to New York State, you can see just the differences. Nationally is 50. And then the national norm from the previous year was a little bit higher than 50. So you can see, just by visually seeing our green, we have more green.
So if we look at ELA, we have 71% of our students at the end of the spring, early or on grade level or above. But what's really notable here is if you look at the difference from, oh no, it's not on this slide, never mind.
And this is the fall to spring growth for us.
This is the slide.
That's what she wanted to talk about. So this is our fall to spring growth last year, and the thing I love about the colors is you can visually see just how different, how much we grew based on the diagnostic. And again, the diagnostic is based on New York State standards, right? It's not based on their own, you know, whatever they're placing in. It is based on New York State standards. So you can see that we had that 69% where we started the year at 30% early or on grade level, and 51% of the students were one grade level below. But just to note that the biggest notation, because when they first come in, they're not expected to know the grade level standards, so it's like a tricky chart. But the biggest thing to note is that the kids who were in the red, right, 2 to 3 grade levels below, went from 18 to 8, right? So we captured 10% of students and brought them, we, meaning teachers, brought those kids up at least into the grade below or into the grade level band that they're in, which is amazing.
This was the slide I was talking about. That was so significant. If we look in the beginning of the year in fall, we had 44% proficient, and at the end of the year, we had 71. But what's really notable are those areas of red. Going into the fall, we had almost 20% of our students 2 to 3 grade levels below grade, and then coming out of the year, we only had 10%, which is, we closed the gap in half right there.
So this is a domain level comparison. So for math, there are 4 domains. There's numbers and operations, K to 8, algebra and algebraic thinking, K to 8, measurement and data, K to 8, geometry, K to 8, just so that you know. And if you have a student and you see their report, you see these domains for math. So, what this is showing us is the percent of students placing mid or above grade level in the spring, which is optimally where you want a student to place, mid or above grade level. So the national percent in kindergarten, for instance, was 42%, and we were more than 5 points above the national. So this is what this chart is showing, that deep, deep blue is showing that we are well above the national point. So yes, well above it, but of course, we would like 59 to be 99, right? Of course, we would like 52 to be 99, right? We want it to be as high as possible, but related to the national placement, we have well exceeded. And you see these other colors represent less, we didn't exceed quite as much. So here for first grade in measurement and data, we only achieve 4 points above the national. The national was 41, so we didn't quite make that 5 or above. That's why this color's different. Geometry in second, same. And this gray shows that we are below the national designation in third for geometry, which is definitely an area that we want to pay attention to. And then here in eighth, you see just some areas where we are above, but ever so slightly. And even despite being above, we always want to push to be better than ourselves, right? And also a note that eighth grade algebra students did not take the screener last year.
Can you explain why they don't take the screener?
Because it's a high school level course that they're taking. They're
not
not a
taking
specific
eighth
course,
grade.
they're not an eighth grade student, they're a ninth grade student for math.
But they're still eighth graders if we're asking what skills they have as eighth grade math students.
Right, but they've passed the class already, they're now at the high school level math course.
Okay. Just distorts those numbers, right?
Well, you're testing a different group of kids,
Right.
students, yes.
So when we look at reading, we have many
Can I ask one quick question? So, you know, I understand how that missing the eighth grade students would maybe impact that number. Is it, the students who go to algebra in eighth grade are already in accelerated in seventh grade? Is it possible to break out those seventh grade numbers and see what they would be if we already break out that group, so we know if we're actually looking at a meaningful change, or if that's just
It's possible.
we're
It's something we
separating out
can-
these two groups?
Absolutely, we can notate it. We would have to do it through like a CSV file and get our mighty mathematician, Dr. Phoebe, on it.
Can we just
Could
make the
you-
assumption that those numbers would just be higher if they were included? I mean, I don't need to know personally.
Well, I think we are currently making
Right.
that assumption, but
Yeah,
I'm saying, is it a right assumption?
That it's instead of 32% for the eighth grade on the numbers and operations, it might be 42%?
Oh, no, I don't care what the eighth grade number is, I'm saying, can we break out the seventh grade number to see what this, like, proficiency level is for the kids who are going to become the eighth graders that don't take the test versus the ones who are in this
Because I
number in
think
eighth?
you're asking if we separate those kids out, what would that percent now be?
Right, just because like this seems to me like, yeah, there's a clear possible explanation, which is that you've culled nearly half the grade, right? Like the numbers are big at this point, right?
37%, right?
right.
37%.
So you've culled like maybe your highest performing math students because that's how you assess whether they're gonna be in it. But I'm just wondering if we don't have a meaningful comparison for this eighth grade number, and I'm wondering if we could have a meaningful comparison.
For me, it would just, then we just keep going down the line, right? So like,
Which you don't know though.
exactly, yeah.
Because they were identified and the split happens here in
Right,
seven. You're right, you could go back and
It
split
just would continue, yeah.
Right, I see, because then you would, if you keep identifying.
We're just,
them
it's,
all.
what grade is it that we're stopping that, where we just know, okay, we've, like, this was a clear note that it's easy for me to conceptualize it, that, okay, they don't take it, they're in eighth grade out, like, that would be an easier than if they had done it the one before. But for us, like, for sake of just review, I can see, sure, but it just means, what are we doing with that
Our
data?
seventh
What's the
graders
point
haven't
of that
learned the
data?
curriculum yet, right? So they're taking a test on curriculum they're currently learning. Because our accelerated program is still a Math 7-8 program, so they are learning the material that's on this test.
Right, except in the spring of 24, 25, they've already learned
Like
grade
most
three.
of it, right, most of it.
Right,
Not
like
necessarily. We don't do the first half of 7th grade and the second half of 8th grade, that's not how the curriculum's designed. It's mixed in how we, do it, because based on topics, we'll do a 7-8. We can do 7-8 in September, just because the topics go
I see
naturally
what you're
together.
saying. Like, it's just a deeper dive into that same topic. So
Correct.
they'll have hit some of it, but not all of it.
Correct.
That's supposed to.
We'll go to meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. So, with reading, the iReady really becomes granular. They assess so many different domains, phonological awareness, high-frequency words, phonics, vocabulary. Then comprehension is broken up into two different subcategories here. We have literature and then informational text. After first grade, phonological awareness, you would want students to already have phonological awareness after first grade, so that's why you typically don't see it go on after that. Phonics after third grade, you would pretty much not test after that, so that's why you don't see it there as well. If we look across the board, our vocabulary numbers and our informational text, I would really like to see that go up. I mean, amongst all of them, but I think that's one of the areas that we could really focus on, vocabulary and informational text. If we look at our fifth graders when they leave elementary school, those numbers for where we see informational text, 36th percentile, is we're above the national norms. However, we should be much higher than that. And even when they're leaving Weber, informational text 46% and vocabulary, if you look at that, 49%, so we could be much higher than that. The one area that we were slightly above in phonological awareness was first grade. And again, this year is our first year that we're having K-2 programs in first grade for phonics and phonemic awareness. So we're hoping that number goes.
This year is the first year.
This year is the first year all elementary schools.
We did a little bit last year.
Correct. We did some last year. This year, every school adopted something.
Okay, so math proficiency by subgroups, K to 8, again, ENL, RLs, ED, economically disadvantaged, SWD, students with disabilities, and you can see fall to spring. So overall, there was 39% growth as a district, so to speak. And then when we drill down into the subgroups, we did have a nice amount of growth for our ENL population. And then smaller amounts of growth for economically disadvantaged and students with disability, just notating that economically disadvantaged students had the least amount of growth.
And there's crossover, could be in those
Very well could be crossover,
groups as well.
yes.
So when we look at our proficiency in rates in our subgroups, the other thing to take into consideration is when we looked at our subgroups on our other slides, it was New York State data, which is only grades 3 through 8. Here we're looking for, our iReady data is K through 8. So we are getting K-2 students in this cohort of students.
And if I interject, and students who opt out. Right?
Correct.
So this is a non-opt-out, so those who are not represented in New York State testing are represented
Presented
here.
here. That could also be why we see slight increases in most of our data here. So if we look at all students, proficiency rates are 71% for ELA. Our ENL is 54%. Our economically disadvantaged 37%, and students with disabilities 38%. And there was some significant growth if we look at our ENL students going from 22nd percentile to 54th percentile. That's significant growth in 1 year.
Okay, so now we're going to have a math proficiency comparison. So this first slide shows you all schools, all of the schools, all 6, fall to spring overall math proficiency based on iReady's diagnostic. And you can see a lot of the schools, so our first 3 schools pretty much started out at the same proficiency rate, and then you can see the differences in the growth. Salem started out slightly above, and you can see the jump in the growth. Sousa and Salem were kind of neck and neck, and then you see Weber started out relatively high, and you see some growth. So now we are looking at specifically kindergarten. So this is, yes.
I'm sorry, I know you have a million slides, but so I'm gonna try to be quick, but maybe it's faster to interject.
This one?
The math proficiency on the all schools. Is there meaning that you would read into the fact that Weber, even in 2024, is starting at this 45, when the elementary schools were starting lower? Like, there's no school in between those. So is there something you're reading into that, or do we just not even have enough data to read into that? I mean, is Mrs. Javelin getting them during the summer and?
Giving them really good vitamins and they log in.
That's a hard thing to answer
Are
off
they
the
cheating?
cuff. I hope not. I hope not.
It wasn't a real question. I really don't
Yeah,
think they
it's
are on
something
this,
to
but
look at,
like,
yeah.
but we don't have an explanation for that, right?
But even so, like if we go into grade by grade, sometimes you'll have a grade finish off at a particular place, and then when they jump back in the fall, so one thing that was brought to my attention, and this is anecdotal because I haven't teased out numbers for it, is a lot of students are expected to drop summer slide, right? Everybody hears that.
Yeah, that's what I was
And
gonna say.
quite a few students, when they were tested in the fall, did not drop. So a lot of teachers and, we're talking to the AIS staff more, are very surprised by that. So could parents be keying into like the idea of summer slide, and now that I'm not gonna just say my path, but whatever it is that they could be doing over the summer?
Well, I was gonna say, remember, you're looking at, if we average this out, let's just say we're close to 70% in the spring, right? So we're dropping really from 70 to 45. This is 1 year, so I can't use this data, right? So there is a drop. We also give summer homework. Right, so this summer, every student they were supposed to do My Path this summer, which could help with the increase.
And I know there are math packets, but not for everyone, right?
Math packets were for acceleration.
Okay.
The incoming 6, because that's the grade you were asking about, we were asking them to do My Path over the summer, to just keep up where they're at and for them to grow from where they're currently
So
at.
maybe it
I would recommend that you look at slide 49 and 50 between 5th grade and Weber instead of looking at this one.
Yeah, because they
The
finish
difference
off.
is not that big.
Yeah. Yes, can we, I'm saying yes, I'm not listening.
But I feel like you would need the spring from the year before to see the fall
It's there
of this
also.
year.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
we'll get to it, but to answer it even generally, we are even seeing from spring, how kids finished off, even coming into fall, we always expect and always have had like NWEA dips, like lower, they come back lower, and we've seen quite a few kids, and anecdotally, not a real numbers, right? But we've seen kids not get lower, and like it's a happy shot.
This year, you're
This
saying
year,
specifically?
yep.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
someone had their hand up, and I don't know if we're supposed to do that.
That's very, oh, what? Oh, no, we'll come back, we'll come back.
Okay, I wasn't sure, I'm like, I don't know if we're supposed to. Okay, so now we are specific to kindergarten. You can see, you can see how the proficiency rate, I'll call it low, it's pretty low across the board, lower in some than others. But I think this is phenomenal, right? To see that proficiency jump like this, so great work, I think, at that base kindergarten foundational level, to see these jumps in proficiency from fall to spring in math. Here's our first grade, again, coming in, so I think this is like part of the conversation, like part of that conversation, so like if they're finishing off here.
These are crazy numbers.
Yeah.
Can we just note that? This graph is crazy. You must have been so excited when you made it.
Yeah, these jumps they're amazing. And teachers are working really hard, even this year as we start going into classrooms and seeing, they're really utilizing the reporting that's available to do their small group, and they're really, I think it's making a difference. So this is our first grade, yes.
I'm not trying to diminish these jumps, but I still am always confused when you explain to me with iReady the proficiency differences when it's a fall first grade are you first grade, beginning of first grade, fall? You know what I'm talking about, where you always get me on that one?
Yes.
So these jumps are
Spring first.
also could be because of how iReady reports like that, right?
So what is being explained is when you sit down, I am a student in September, I am entering into 5th grade. I sit down at my seat and iReady is going to start me, I'll do first grade.
Yes.
iReady is going to start me at first grade material. It gets too hard, it brings me down to K, so forth and so on until I get a level. Let's say that I place in kindergarten as a September first grade student. I am not, it's going to show up as one level behind, but in the fall only, and I have to keep saying, in the fall only, that's not bad, because when you think about it, it's September 3rd, why would I know first grade material, right? I just sat down here. So when you see, there's various views on reporting, but when you see it, a first grade student testing as kindergarten, it'll show one level below, but they're not one level below, if everyone's following.
So in other words, these numbers are distorted in a certain sense that,
Just for iReady.
In other words, the growth is predicted. Like, in other words, the growth between fall and spring is absolutely predicted. What we're looking for is the growth somewhat constant across schools, because now we've adopted a universal program in mathematics. Whereas, for example, in ELA, we haven't adopted a universal program. So each school is doing their own, and each teacher is doing their own program. So what do we see in terms of the differences between growth? Because you should always see growth between fall and spring. That's predictable. The question is how much growth, and is there sustained growth across all of the buildings?
So for me, when I
Because of
review
the
this
program.
one, I'm only reviewing, because you also put it by building, is the amount of growth between building, not necessarily that there is growth. So that,
Yeah, the growth is predicted.
yeah, but if
Yeah, because we can
Salem's
look
growth
at it,
is
yeah.
substantially higher than, let's just say, Manor Haven, that would be the data points, I think, that you're saying is what the district is really looking at.
That's right.
Not necessarily that, wow, everyone had 50% growth.
That's
between
right. And then what you see is that
How they came in.
And yes, and for example, now what Dr. Mace can do is he can look at Manor Haven's first grade by standard.
Right.
And he can work with his teachers in terms of doing a deep dive into by standard where our kids are struggling, and look at the curriculum and then say, here are some curriculum moves that we have to make. And what we can do at a district level is we can say across the district, where do we need to provide professional development for all first grade teachers as it relates to mathematics. That's the value of the universal screener.
I wanted to take us back, because even if you erase the fall, and you just look at spring proficiency, right? You have to be in the grade level, like you have to finish in the grade level, your score at the end has to finish in the grade level to be up here. So these numbers are, as to use Sean's word, very promising.
Yeah, and the 30%
almost like he's
of
here.
kids, and the 30% of kindergartners who left kindergarten without reaching proficiency is instructive for Manor Haven for first grade
Correct.
teachers
Correct.
now.
Right.
To be able to say,
Identify
okay,
those 30%.
here are the 30%, what are some moves, instructional moves that I have to make?
Yep.
Same with Salem. Sousa, in terms of 90%, that's where we'd like to see all of our proficiency by the end of the year. We'd like to see it approaching or above 90%.
And just on a more granular level, these reports will show by domain also. I know you show it like later, but like or you did already, I don't know. I've read these slides 30 times. I don't know if you showed it, but the domain, yes. The domain, like subject areas, so what you're saying is like even more so that the principal can look in and say, I'm gonna use geometry. I know geometry was somewhere that we're not doing so amazing in comparison
Yes.
to other. So that they can go in and just see it's this potentially.
Yeah, and
If they're using it appropriately.
Right, but
No,
also they
all
can
of
see
these
it.
things, all of those are questions, right? So why, so why is there a gap here in performance between, Sousa and Manor Haven, or Sousa and Salem even, right? So what can we infer about those gaps, and then what does the what can we do in terms of the curriculum? So if all the kids are struggling in geometry, then we would expect from the district level that we would be able to give them some resources and professional development to help solidify that area in particular. So all of this just gives us a lot more questions, all of the data, which is,
Oh, no. I'm not doing all of them.
yeah, which is the point.
Geometry, just so you know, geometry also often comes after the spring test.
Yeah, I knew that was
Like
gonna
I
be
just,
like an
I just have,
anomaly
just, that's
one.
more like an
Yeah.
FYI, but it's
Yeah.
usually like a post-test topic.
And it's something that even prior, last year and the year before, we had discussions about, even with Dana, we had discussions about, like, how can you infuse it, and maybe infuse it even at the beginning, or different ways, so that it doesn't get lost by the time you get to the end of the curriculum.
So this is incredibly valuable for a grade level meeting
Yep.
in the beginning of the year for the principals to be able to sit down with teachers and look at where kids ended the year before, and look at where their kids ended in terms of if you're sitting with first grade teachers, you'd be looking at the kindergarten numbers and you'd be looking at the first grade numbers to be able to say, how do we bridge the gap from where they ended, and how do we make sure there's not such a significant gap for the following year? So that's what we're gonna talk about.
And the teachers can see this by student and by class in terms of what the domains are. So there's a lot of also meaningful data that we're not sharing
By
here.
standard.
Yes.
They can see it by standard,
By
sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
But by standard, still by individual students
Yes.
and by their whole class. And then building level, they can be comparing the classes to be very targeted on what we're supporting.
There's a lot of great information, like if you see, for instance, there's a standards mastery report. So if you see that, at the beginning of the year, you would expect it, but let's say by January, I know I've covered these 5 standards, and I notice in my standards mastery report that half of my class still doesn't understand one of these standards that we covered. That's a piece of information for me, yeah.
It seems very, very useful.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're like, if you're
Differentiation.
moving on the topic too, you don't necessarily know, wait a second, my whole class didn't get X that we've moved on from.
Yes. Yeah, it's an
That's great.
incredibly valuable tool. And, now that we're using a math program with Fidelity also, we can look at unit assessments once those begin to be administered, so that, again, it would give teachers more data to be able to impact instruction in the moment, before kids finish the year.
like more checkpoints throughout
Yeah.
the year.
So, more grades, right? Here's our second grade math proficiency, fall to spring. And there you can see some interesting shifts happening, things to look at, and talk about. Third grade, same, you see some variation here in proficiency and performance, school to school. Fourth grade, so these are conversations, even grade to grade, within the same school, like what's going on, what do we need to tighten up and look at? And then fifth grade. Okay. And here is Weber, math proficiency by grade. And same notation about our eighth graders. So we've seen some growth across K-8 for our screener, which is right, that makes sense. You're not, hopefully, your screen is not going from 5% to 4% by the end of the year. So grade 5 across all buildings had the least amount of growth. We talked about the whole implementation dip and things like that. But we do feel like using this program consistently, the level of professional development, the embedded support, the supportive math resource across the buildings, the support of the administrators at the buildings, we do feel like it's starting to, and teachers taking hold, is starting to really shift some things for our math and in general. So this is a model of how these type of investments can create and sustain growth. So now we'll move into literacy.
So again, we'll take you from a broad perspective and then we'll go down to each grade level. So here's reading proficiency across all schools. All schools made similar amounts of growth, K to 5, anywhere between like 35 to 40, almost 40% growth, with Salem being the highest, Sousa right behind. Kindergarten, this is one of my favorites. This is where I love to see the scores. This is where we should be performing across all grade levels at these rates. And again, look at the percentage of growth, right? Because when, yes, go ahead.
What, Bill, were the pilots for phonemic awareness in isolated buildings?
Good question. Yes, some buildings were implementing it. Manor Haven in kindergarten was, Daly in kindergarten was, Salem in kindergarten was, Sousa always had foundations, and Guggenheim was in kindergarten. Kindergarten was pretty across the board with using it.
So there you go, there's the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it-
So all of them?
All of them.
all of them were in kindergarten last year, when I looked at, yes. Manor Haven, Daly, and Guggenheim had the most amount of growth out of all of these. Okay, first grade. So when we look at first grade, the growth is tremendous in first grade as well. Not as great as we were in kindergarten, however, we are going on the right track here. If we look, we went from Daly 18th percentile to 77th percentile. But again, we would like all of these numbers to be consistent across all schools. Grade 1 at Daly and Salem had the most amount of growth last year. Okay, second grade. Second grade at Sousa here had the most amount of growth. However, if we look, trying to think about what you said to me about the pilots, what was going in place last year. So if we look at Daly and Guggenheim, they both pretty much started the same and made the same amount of growth. Manor Haven made very similar growth, although we would like those numbers to be much higher.
So do we know
this
what
year-
buildings we're doing it for
We
second?
We do, yeah. Do you want me to tell you? Okay, yeah.
Does this indicate for you that
Yes.
it was effective?
Sousa, always had foundations in place in second grade, so that would make sense. Daly had foundations in place in second grade. Guggenheim was using, last year they were using a all-inclusive program, so they weren't just using a phonics program. Manor Haven were using different pieces of programs, different approaches, and Salem, Bridge to Reading is gonna be this year for second grade. So,
So they did,
yeah,
to clarify with Manor Haven, you're saying they didn't have one program in the school,
correct, they had
teachers
different,
can
For
choose.
second.
For
correct,
second.
for second grade, yes,
So
correct.
this is more evidence of the effectiveness.
But this year, K to 2,
Yeah,
all schools are using
all schools, consistent program,
a
correct,
consistent phonics program.
and
So-
phonics awareness, yeah.
Next year will be an interesting
It's
study.
gonna be exciting,
Right.
yes.
Can't wait.
Exciting.
Committee ones. It's 11:15, there's a lot of slides. Are we, okay, is it in this?
Or we're not, we're just
Okay.
gonna keep going.
Okay, all right, third grade, if we look at third grade here, Manor Haven and Daly had the most amount of growth in third grade. I'll try to talk very quick. That's okay. Next slide.
Okay.
Fourth grade, when we look at the numbers across fourth grade, Guggenheim and Daly had the most amount of growth, although Salem was the highest achieving there. And fifth grade at Sousa had the most amount of growth. And again, we would like to see the growth consistent across all schools.
If we just point out for one second, I know I'm trying not
It's
to
okay.
stop, but
No,
we
it's
have
okay.
not, so this is an example of here, if you look at Salem for a moment, right? So 46% of the kids began fifth grade reading on grade level or proficient. So that also is very instructive to teachers in terms of enrichment and in terms of stretching the grade level concepts beyond where, beyond the grade level concepts, stretching them perhaps a year or two above, because 46% of your kids are already proficient.
Fifth grade ready.
So that's where that, that's where that is incredibly meaningful, and you didn't necessarily see that in math, which is not unexpected. Math and reading are so different in that way.
And Weber, here we are at Weber, coming into sixth grade, put my glasses back on, 49% were proficient, and at the end of sixth grade, 61%, and then when we leave Weber, 72% are proficient,
And this is where you'd like to see more growth,
correct?
from where they begin to where they end.
And that's the importance of closing the gap earlier on, so that we do see this type of growth. Okay, so our overview for ELA, there was of course growth, but there was uneven and inconsistent growth, especially in grades 2 to 5. The early gains that we made in grades K to 2 might not be sustained throughout the upper grades. Having a patchwork of programs and inconsistent approaches was evident, and without action, we will not continue to grow in literacy. So that's why we are putting things in place now.
Okay,
Our favorite, AIS.
AIS.
So for Weber, if you can see here, we do have too many students going into Weber that require support. So we are going to try, you start with math and then I'll.
So the number of students in math, grade 6, 53, obviously, when you think about AIS's academic intervention services. So I don't know if anybody remembers the RTI presentation. Okay, so those students would qualify for services based on multiple measures. So even in the case that you get 53 students in your sixth grade, you would hope that through services and then their regular classroom tier 1 instruction, that number would go down. And we see that the number actually increases year to year, which is not the way we want. We want that to flip, right, and go down. So again, looking at what we are doing tier one, looking at our services that we're providing, because academic intervention services, they have to be targeted. So we are definitely starting our work on that.
To qualify for the AIS in sixth grade, is it identified in fifth grade, at the end of fifth grade by the elementary school, or in sixth grade by the staff?
These numbers are the start of fifth, from fifth. Well, it's multiple measures, but part of a piece of it is fifth grade teacher.
So the fifth grade teachers have a heavy say potential, is that a correct
No,
sense?
so
Who decides 53 students are getting AIS in sixth grade? And at what point?
Okay, so there, do you want me to talk a little bit, just?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Just sixth
So,
grade.
twofold. Fifth grade teachers don't service special ed students in their AIS program.
Yep.
We service them in the middle school, so that's one area where we grow eventually, because we're looking at those students that haven't been looked at because they use their special education services for their AIS program in the elementary school. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So
No, so if a child gets resource room in fifth grade,
their resource room teacher will be doing it in fifth grade, where we do it in resource room, and we
AIS.
do it in AIS. They
in
get-
sixth grade.
Correct.
But
But
that's-
so those students aren't necessarily in this number yet, because they're new to us. So this number over the summer is based on recommendation from a teacher. We look at iReady scores, we look at state scores. Right now, we're in the process of testing. Did they test them last year? I know we're talking about doing a test, Juanita.
Sorry.
That's okay, we were talking about giving them a test also, right? A
Yeah, well-
screener.
We're gonna use the end of fifth grade.
Yes.
So-
They have
That
it.
fifth grade, right?
Yes, so that's one of their
So that's
measures.
where it comes from for the sixth grade. Once they're at Weber, the number increases because then we use additional information to see if they need more services.
I was just gonna say, isn't it just a justification of why your number doubled? Is that now you have them and you are now seeing, or is it what we just said with the special ed students? So like, they,
Generally speaking, at the elementary level, if the student, and again, defining our tiers, right? Special education is outside of our pyramid.
Yeah.
They could arguably, and nothing precludes them from being included and provided with a tier 2 support. There's not enough hours in a day at the elementary school, because then they're never in class, they're pulled too much. We also look at the idea that if you have a student with a disability, now we're giving you 5 different teachers to work with on the same concept, and it just becomes too confusing for students. When they get to Weber, there is more time in their day based on the way the schedule breaks out. So we do find that more often we will provide that support to students. Beth and I have worked together over the last couple of years where it might be an AIS class taught by a special education teacher with the special education student. So again, we're not giving them extra people to work with, but just more of what I'll call a double dose of support at the middle school, because now we have the time in the day to be able to do that.
So at the middle school, they have resource room and AIS?
They
or
could,
can.
yes, they can.
so the only reason I asked for clarification, because those are really important dots, I think for us, so that, I'm not saying it would have been recommended, but like, had the cabinet said at the end of these slides that we need 4 more AIS teachers in sixth grade, that would be a skewed kind of response, because there's a justification of, it's just the
Yeah,
same
it's still
students.
concerning though. It's still concerning because you should not, I mean, the
It should still
fact
go
that
down
we
to-
have 104 students that need math AIS in grade 7 where they're identified through the teacher, and because there's flexibility in the schedule or whatever the fact of the matter is, still demonstrates that that's a large number of kids that our teachers feel are not at grade level or require additional support. The reading numbers are more concerning to me in terms of the number of kids that require reading. I think when I see this, it speaks to the need to invest in early intervention, and it speaks to the need to strengthen the foundation at the elementary program. It's not to say that there's not work that needs to be done in grade 6, there clearly is, or grade 7 and 8 in terms of making sure that there's not such a large jump between grade 6 and grade 7. That's usual work that needs to be done from elementary to secondary. But this speaks to the need to really invest in early intervention
Yeah.
and strengthen the foundation at the elementary level,
Thank you.
in my view.
Math is also just, math is very fluid in the middle, the AIS math is very fluid. Students come in and out of it all the time.
So everybody has babysitting set up for after 3 o'clock, because
We're nearing the end.
We're getting to the end and then we'll have an hour and a half of questions.
Very important slides.
Yeah, this is our summary.
Okay, so,
the important part right here.
yeah, celebrating math literacy and celebrating math with the idea of literacy urgency. All right. So we have our program, we've had a lot of professional development, we've had embedded support, we have consistent growth, and I think we have consistent usage of the program. Educators are tapping in, learning more and more about the resources, how to use the reports to identify students, create small groups, and really start to target the students who need a little bit more help. I even saw in a cultural connection for an enrichment. So I think math, people are really starting to take under their wing and use, and it shows.
So math kind of did all the hard work. They kind of paved the road for us, and now reading has to take place and do that same paving of the road. So again, we have some uneven outcomes, especially in grades 2 to 6. Patchwork of programs and consistency, a lot of students going to AIS services, more so than we should have, not having a lot of coherence. Math actually proves what can be done, and literacy that, I mean, if you can't read, it's very difficult to read the word problems in math, right? So one's gonna compensate the other.
Okay, so again, our math work, as a district, as the math committee, as all the teachers, that work and that coherence is showing us that if you invest in the professional development and the implementation, that you can really start to see great results.
And I feel like I said this. We really need to start looking at what's happening in literacy, and the demands for literacy should be the same as they were for math. Every year that goes by that we don't have a unified, consistent program and best practices happening, our students have some missed opportunities. We really need to start thinking about budgeting and planning, because with reading programs comes a plethora of books. So for the 2027 school year, when we plan on implementing it, we're gonna need some budgetary,
Consideration.
yes.
All right, so, that's you, reading.
Oh, so I just said this. I think I just said the first
Okay.
bullet.
So, RTI, MTSS, so we talked about RTI last year, we have to move towards MTSS. So these are budgetary implications, so, yep, we know about the literacy piece. Well, remember, this is also K to 5, so this is material K to 5 all at once. And also some sort of data dashboard, EduClimber, Branching Minds. There's availability on Frontline, because MTSS is pulling in your attendance behavior with the academics to kind of get that whole picture.
Implementing instructional coaches. We saw that when we had the math program implemented, having an embedded specialist really helped support the teachers. When we adopt a new program, having literacy coaches to be there on a daily basis with the teachers, helping them, support them, would be beneficial.
And in terms of math, continuing this idea of numeracy coaches, our math resource at the elementary, they did a lot of bending and stretching. I have to give them their kudos last year, even this year. So having coaches will help to really create a better foundation for the implementation and sustained growth of math beyond pulling our math resource in a million different directions. And we will have to review staffing levels for AIS services, in terms of some best practices. We did a little bit of shifting last year.
Because we want to put support where the
It's needed.
support is needed most, right? That's the purpose of AIS. Oh, okay. So we're our PGCD Reading Subcommittee. I'm the co-chair along with Dr. Troiani. We have a 3-year plan in place. We are in year 2 right now of our 3-year plan. We're reviewing programs. We narrowed it down to about 5 of them. We are calling districts to actually go visit other districts that are implementing these programs. And then from there, we are narrowing it down to 3. We're having rubric, we're kind of following the same process that math did. We're getting rubrics together. We're going to look at everything from teacher input to standards to the materials. And then next year, we're going to pilot them across the district. And then in 2027, we're going to implement whole district-wide. So it's very exciting.
In terms of AIS, Dr. Barcella and I have been working with our AIS reading and math providers. We started last year and we've really built out our meetings and discussions this year. We have a whole year's worth of meetings planned out.
Monthly meetings.
Monthly meetings, yeah. So the RTI plan continues to be updated. It is guiding us for identification through multiple measures of students. And we are working towards common benchmarks for math. Since we have a program across the district, it is easier to pull out those unit assessments. We'll have some finalization for math to do, math subcommittee, but utilizing unit assessments, there are quizzes. There are things that can be used in the math program, so that's kind of an easy win for us as a district. Since we don't have a comprehensive reading program, it is harder to have common benchmarks, so just laying that transparently on the floor.
Yep.
And as for targeted intervention, you know, we are meeting with our AIS providers to continue the discussion specifically on like the tier 3 students, identifying what interventions are being used with those students, because the whole point of this process is that you move, right? It's supposed to be fluid. And we hope to address the needs and the gaps to move kids from tier 3, tier 2 back to their classroom, right? It's not a sentence. It's, right,
You're not in AIS for life, is what we try to say. You should be moving in and out of tier 2. If you go into tier 3, you should be moving in and out, so.
AIS.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so
K-5.
we'd probably just wanna say that this
Yes,
is.
Yes.
K5,
K5.
K5, sorry, yes. Dr. Marcella and I are doing the work with reading and math K5, AIS providers. Also,
No, you
Okay.
could tackle ENL.
more ENL push-in services are being provided. There are some buildings that are going headfirst and tackling, and other buildings that are taking more of a slow approach, but everyone is attempting to do more push-in services. So just a little bit of working with Ms. Zarate and her department. So the push-in services allow the ENL students to have support, but also have classroom instruction and not miss the tier 1. So that's kind of what we are trying to accomplish. So as Ms. Zarate will tell you, there are students, depending on the level, that must have a pullout, and those we have to abide by based on CR 154 and the regulations. But where there is flexibility within the units and you can do push-in, we are trying to embed more of that. And
Yep. We are putting, this year, just like we did a K2 phonics and phonemic awareness program across the district, the ENL teachers also have that same phonics and phonemic awareness program, so they're able to mirror what happens in the classroom, so the students are not missing their tier 1.
So we do like to thank the ENL department,
Yes, thank
Ms.
you.
Zarate for,
Purchasing and,
a large financial commitment
yes.
to have that happen.
And it's important for ENL learners to have repetition and hear the same language. I mean, all learners actually, to hear the same language and the consistent language and repetition.
In math, and which we hope permeates out, our big focus is small group instruction. So there are a lot of reports. There's a prerequisite report, instructional grouping reports, and all these reports that exist that guide and aid classroom teachers in terms of who belongs where based on their diagnostic performance. And using those reports and using the embedded specialist Dana during her sessions to kind of target how to set up small group instruction and run the different centers, and providing tier 2 support for students also as a push-in and differentiating.
So right now, we're inundating teachers with PD, in literacy and in ENL. In literacy, what we're doing is we're having, I told you, October 21st Superintendent's Conference Day. We're having a national speaker come in. We're also having grade level, throughout the whole year, grade level best practices in literacy, looking at profiles of a reader. Also ENL on Wednesdays. We're having professional development as well as throughout the year.
Yes, and I think the important thing is, although these strategies, right, scaffolding strategies for ELs, you can very much use those strategies for other students who are not ELs. So again, another thanks to the ENL department for getting that PD set up and sponsored. Math, again, we don't have Dana every 4 days a week, but she is coming to help all of the teachers and guide them through their small group instruction, planning, and execution. And there will be some more support as needed, ad hoc kind of, depending. So again, right, we can see what's possible based on what teachers and everyone here with the support has been able to do over the last 2 years with math. And there are a lot of planning and budget implications with everything that we are trying to do. But I think we know that we're on the right road, looking at the data, looking at everything.
And it's important that we want all of our students, right, including the subgroups, everyone to thrive.
Our students are only as successful as the opportunities we give them to learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow. We're always late. That's what we do at curriculum. So I'm just gonna do a high level thank you for the time commitment of our leadership and our staff
Yep.
into really focusing deeply on instruction and the massive commitment it's taken from our classroom teachers and the support that's been put in place. The growth is obvious and exciting, and we look forward to learning more about literacy throughout this year as well. We have 1,000 questions. This conversation will be taking place in Tuesday night's meeting in a smaller forum in terms of the content. And we've decided as a committee to save our questions for Tuesday.
You're so
So that-
lucky.
We thank you.
Are you gonna be there Tuesday?
We're
So-
we're at a conference.
Dr. Finney will be there. Finney will be there. However, you're not completely out of the woods yet, because we do have community members here that we want to open it up to as they've come and obviously have a very invested interest in this topic. So please raise your hand and I will absolutely make sure that, forgive me, say your name again.
I'm Heather Hinkle.
Heather, nice to meet you.
I'm a neuropsychologist, and I have a question about the way the iReady norms work, because the way you talk about it, I think that they're different from the way like the KTA and the YA norms work, where there's different fall and spring norms, correct? So it is grade standard, and my incoming second grader is being compared to second grade norms, both on September 2nd and on June 20th.
Yes,
Okay. So that's where you're saying that growth is expected.
yes.
Do we have the third testing from last year? Because you only showed fall and spring, but weren't they given winter testing?
Yeah, we have it, yeah, but generally speaking, when you look at the growth, people are
Is it-
comparing the beginning to the end.
Secondarily, is the testing the same? Like, are the tests the same? So my son is in 6th grade, and he told me the questions were the same, the passages were the same, I didn't read it and I answered from memory.
So
But
it is,
he maxed it out, so whatever he did worked. But do you,
it's computer adaptive, so computer adaptive basically means that it starts out, if you're in 6th grade, hypothetically, it'll start you with the 6th grade comprehension question. If you get it right, it will go to, let's say, mid-6th grade. If you get it wrong, it brings it back, and it just keeps going until it gets to that mark of 50-50 where it can place you in, so like you could be in my class and I could end 3rd grade and you could end 6th grade because
But
it's adapted to
Shouldn't be
you.
the same.
But the question
but
shouldn't be
yeah,
the
so,
same.
but that's my thing, is like, how many questions are there for the 7th grade bank? Like,
For-
what is,
Those are
what?
12
What?
What?
Those are 12 grade material.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so if your child entered into a question, I'm just gonna say hypothetically that they saw last year and they got it, it should get harder and give them a
And shouldn't
question
give him
that
the
they.
same, and he shouldn't have had, I mean, his perception was that almost all the questions were the same. But he also has now been told that he has, no MyPath.
Yes, so
So-
my path does
So even though it
finish
goes till
at
12th
8th
grade,
grade. The
test goes to
testing,
8th grade.
yes, the
Okay.
testing goes beyond, like, it'll place you beyond. But in terms of getting my path or personalized instruction,
Once you've mastered it.
once you've gone through 8, they don't have a 9 through 12
so
my
once you've
path.
mastered 8th grade, you have, what are you guys advising teachers to do for these
We're looking
students?
for another program to try, because we have a handful of students, it's not that many, but we definitely do have a handful of students starting in 6th grade. We're looking for a program that we could maybe,
about
IXL, yeah, we're looking at it to see if we could have another program. The difference between IXL and this is, it's not based on what level they're at, it's we're assigning problems to them, so it's different than this, which this is
Growing with them.
growing with them, right?
Okay, so there is something in,
We're trying to find a program that we like, but again, it's money and things like that. So there's a budget piece to it, but we're trying to find a program, and we're really trying to work with the high school to find a program so that it continues with them through high school. So my chairperson's working with the high school chairperson. Together, we're trying to find a program so it continues with them through high school.
Okay, next.
I'm sorry, can I just interject? That's a really interesting point, and maybe we can continue it on Tuesday night, because like, my initial reaction is like, maybe we should have a conversation about whether program is even the right thing, or like, do they need honors English?
yes. Well, I mean, it's also from us and for my son,
Well,
it's
I
part of
think
his
they're actually
grade.
separate, honestly, I think they're two separate things, and I would like to push it separately, like, if we're using iReady as a place for growth, is different than a coursework where we're meeting someone at a needs where they're at, right, so like,
Is it?
I see it differently.
I mean, shouldn't the coursework encourage the growth too?
Yes, but this like maps their growth, so we're giving them specific, the iReady pathway is giving them specific targeted areas where they show weakness. So they
But if
grow in
if
it.
you're
But what if
saying
they're
that
not
they've
showing their
mastered and they don't have a MyPath,
It mastered it up to 8th grade, it doesn't mean they mastered it up to 12th grade. We're trying to see if there's something out there that we can give them skill sets for where they're at to master somewhere else.
I see what you're saying. You're saying there's still a benefit to knowing where they are and encouraging them to go further. And so like, for argument's sake, even if we were doing honors English, you know, starting in the middle school, we still wouldn't have a tool to know, are we pushing them and providing them with enough challenge that we're making them max out into 12th grade, or like, I know NWA,
Right.
you could get a reading that
Because this
was
is
like
like
you're reading at
specific
a
skills,
postdoc
right? This is
level.
specific skills, right? So like when I think of a middle school English class, we're not just working on reading, we're working on writing, and we're looking at, this is testing strictly reading. So we were looking for skill set for reading, where an honors program is gonna be doing writing and research, and there's gonna be other
No,
skills that come
I see what
into
you're
it.
saying. You're saying we still would want the data to make sure that we're effectively serving them as well as we could be serving them and pushing.
Correct.
I do wanna also, I just wanted to double check myself before I said this on camera.
Notice I don't check myself.
I pulled up a 8th grade student whose testing for fall is already mid-8th, which means that they won't have a path. But there are still tools for instruction or areas of growth that the teacher can see to help, right? Like, so just because they don't have a path, doesn't mean, it's not like, okay, you're perfect, goodbye.
No,
No, I'm just saying, like, there's still.
I think that the concern is when it's part of a grade in middle school, and they're told to do My Path a week, and, yeah, I mean, we're 1 month in, but the teachers were like,
You're correct in what you're saying.
and my son's like, well, what do I do now? How do I get those points?
Gotcha.
So,
And just as
Oh,
a
George?
Yes, I think where a lot of these districts, especially this one, sees itself fragmented. It's really a continuum, K through 12. It's all united, one piece. If you think of it as fragmentation, it's not going to work. That's why I always give again my pitch about directors, K through 12, that are in charge of that part of the curriculum and that are centrally located. Otherwise, we're going back to waiting for Godot. Now, I am curious. I know the statistics, and there are statistics, and there are statistics and ways of looking nationally, state. There's a lot of caveats. I know because we have done it. Have you looked at our cohort of school districts that we usually, not me, but usually the community compares itself to? Because it's very interesting. I mean, it's good that Dr. Paz is here because he knows what I'm talking about. When you look at what other school districts are doing in a lot of these areas, a lot of good information, interesting questions, and questions as to why. Why?
Yeah, so part of the work that the literacy committee will do in terms of when they go to select a program is they're going to go visit some other schools. And they're going to look at the program implementation at those schools, ask questions of teachers that have been using the programs to figure out what's working really well and where there might be gaps. This way we make a really informed decision. So right now they're examining 5 programs. We would expect by the end of the year for them to narrow that down to, would you say 2?
Yep.
To 3 at the most?
Correct.
To pilot. And then the idea is that they'd have a recommendation to us by January of next school year, January of 2027, for inclusion in the budget. Because as you know, classroom libraries are incredibly expensive, and we want to make sure that whatever we put in place, we put enough support in place so that the teachers can implement the programs with fidelity. That's why you saw on here a discussion about literacy coaches. We're fortunate at the elementary level, we do have a director of elementary instruction, and we do have an associate administrator for literacy. So that middle level instructional leadership between, the assistant superintendent and the principal exists to ensure continuity across all 5 buildings. We don't have the K-12 director model for the curriculum areas yet, as you're aware of, but it is something that the district has been looking at.
Would you agree that that person would look at the entire
Of course.
spectrum and be able to actually even help teachers and help administrators as well as parents?
Yeah, I think the instructional coaches are the most impactful in terms of being able to work directly with teachers, but you do need leadership. But fortunately, as I said, at the elementary level, we have it. So we would need, we'll have that conversation about what the secondary could be.
Yeah, and if you look at Stanford, in their work with Yale as well as Harvard and Columbia, they are looking at, in the report that they put out is that the implementation of the instruction of math is not correct in the United States, the way it is being implemented. That has to change. Because if students come from 5th grade in mathematics, for example, and they get a awakening in 6th grade, and there are, as I have said many times, there are plenty of very good students we have here in this district, very capable, that perhaps we're missing here and there.
Okay. Any other community comments before we close?
You stunned them into silence. You stunned all of us into silence. There's so much data here.
Well, we're
again,
gonna prepare
thank
a higher level version for the board meeting. So the board meeting version will be about 20 minutes because it'll be high level, but you have all the backup here and the entire board has received all the backup.
And we'll have plenty of time for questions that day.
Yeah.
And actually, you just jogged my memory that something you said made me think about where our focus maybe should be on Tuesday, because you made a comment that 90% at the end of the grade is kind of where you want us to be. I think that it would be very interesting to hear our conversation be focused on like, and maybe the shorter version is on like, what is our target, right?
Yeah.
Because like even the state tests, looking at the national and that we're doing better mostly than the national, right? But I'm assuming our goal is to always be significantly above the national
Yes.
because there's always all kinds of districts coming into that number. Like our goal isn't to be there. But understanding like what our goal should be, what do we want these numbers to look like? And it sounds like you've already given us recommendations for how we get there.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that we have instructional coherence across all five of the buildings so that we can then leverage professional development and fill any gaps and holes that will inevitably exist in any curriculum that we adopt.
When do you expect to have the 2025 fall data for the iReady?
What's today? Next week it'll close out. So reporting wise, yeah, next week.
I think it would be interesting to see, I think the cohort, the slide you had, that was with the state testing, but I think it would be interesting to see that cohort data on the iReady too, and to see the fall 2024, spring 2025, and fall 2025, to see that cohort and how they're doing the next year in terms of being,
Year over year for iReady.
yeah.
Jess?
Sorry, I did have one question, slightly off topic, but this is like all great like analysis that's at the, K through 8 level. And I'm just curious if this kind of level of analysis of proficiency is performed at any time or available, like for example, on the Regents exams that everyone has to take, and whether passing rates are pulled out by subgroups as well, and where, if we could access that information anywhere.
Come back in November. So our November board meeting and the curriculum meeting will focus on the middle school and high school data.
And I think we had a high school data presentation last year. I'm trying to remember, do either of you remember if we
So,
had subgroups? in
Yes, it wasn't,
There was.
it was subgroups, but what Dr. Bear brought in was error analysis through BOCES. And that directed PD brought all of our scores up in a year's time. So that was actually one of my comments, was that error analysis that we're describing here should demonstrate the same growth if our teachers are focused on PD to strengthen the instruction at the direct level. So, oh my goodness.
Can I add one other thing? I know you want to wrap up, but I just want to say again, I know I try to say this over and over again, but I really want to say it again because I think the only path to like improving and really reaching excellence at all levels is to have an honest conversation about it. And I'm sure the entire committee is gonna agree with me, and the public who's here is gonna agree with me, but I really appreciate the detail in this and the fact that we as a school district are willing to have a conversation like this without being afraid of looking at the numbers and without having it being accusatory, but having it be really a constructive conversation about where are we and what do we need to do to fix anything that gets fixed, because being able to look at it and having a conversation and being transparent to the public is the only way that we get there. So thank you.
And my concern coming into this was that it wasn't gonna be like this. So I really, and we discussed it prior, that like very appreciative that it was presented the way it was
We
presented.
listened to you.
Yeah, thank you.
And this committee has very specifically, for a number of years now, been highly focused on progress. It's about the growth. It's not about, it's just literally saying, where are we and how do we get better? And thanking our teachers and our staff for really being focused that way. And it's proving effective, so we're very excited. Again, next month's meeting is November 7th, and it is going to be this data analysis for the secondary, leading again to suggestions for areas of plans and budget analysis through all of that. So once again, thank the community and our staff and the public at home for participating, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you all.
Thank you.